About 7 months ago, I did a project that must have made the neighbors think, oh, the crazy gardening lady is at it again. I drilled holes all over our septic mound, and into those holes I threw 2,500 bulbs. And boy, was it worth it. Behind me you see the last flush of blooms on the bulb mound. This is sort of what I started calling the bulb lawn that we put on top of the septic mound. But this thing has been blooming since February 6th. On February 6th, a snowdrop popped up and bloomed. And that is the earliest I can ever remember any bulb ever blooming in my Wisconsin garden. And since February 6th, this thing has provided nonstop interest and beauty. And it has turned out to be so much better than I expected, and I really expected it to be pretty great. It is one of the coolest projects I've done in the garden in a really long time. So we started with Galanthus, snowdrops. Then we went on to winter aconite, so there was white and yellow blooming at the same time, and it was beautiful. And then we got to Iris reticulatus, so blue and purple flowers started popping up here. And then the Anemone, blanda, Grecian windflowers started popping up. And then the Tête-à-Tête daffodils, which really probably were the star of the show. There were a lot of them in the mix. They're a nice short-growing daffodil that just made this whole mound turn yellow. And then we got into a couple different kinds of Fritillaria. All while those Grecian windflowers just keep blooming. And then grape hyacinth in multiple colors. And Glory of the Snow was in there too. And now we've got a couple of botanical tulips coming up. We've got Peppermint stick and the Turkestanica Tulip. Not a lot of those, but just enough to kind of carry this through its last real show. In fact, every time a new bulb started blooming and combining with the other bulbs that were there, I thought this is as good as it's going to get. And then just kept getting better and better and better. So I love this for a few reasons. And the first of which, of course, is that anything blooming early in the year is like a gift. It's so special and so appreciated. Because we planted this kind of half the mound and we sort of focused on one end, we were able to see it from inside. So it was beautiful, and it was so neat every day to look out the window and see, hey, I see a little hint of blue, or I see a little hint of white now. It also had a really good show from the road, so when we're driving by our house and other people were driving by our house, you could see it. I got so many wonderful comments about it. Everybody wanted to know what I did and how I did it. And my only regret with the whole thing is that we didn't plant more, and I am 100% going to fix that this fall, because I would like to plant up the whole rest of the mound. Perhaps the most surprising part of this was that suddenly I found a reason to walk to my septic mound. I can tell you that in more than 20 years of living here, that has never happened before. To see what was blooming and see what was popping up, and to see what that little glimmer that I saw from the window was that was showing up. So although this planting is coming to the end of its big show, I'm glad I'm showing this to you now when things are really starting to fade, although a few things are still putting on a great show. The thing with bulb lawns is that when they're done, they're not just done. You do have to let these bulbs and their foliage stand until it starts to yellow. And then you can mow like normal, which is exactly what we plan to do. So things are a little bit scruffy, and I don't mind that. I think it looks quite natural and fun, and I like that. But some people will not like that, so just, be aware that that's kind of part of this. But I can pretty much guarantee you that if you have a bulb lawn that puts on half the show that mine did, you won't mind living with a little bit of scruff for a few weeks until you can mow it, because it is 100% worth it. So of course I will link the original video so you can check out how this all came together. But basically, I took a variety of bulbs that would bloom over a pretty long season, aiming for things that were small in stature and that would reseed themselves or naturalize, because we want this to naturalize over time. And then I threw all those bulbs into a big bin and I mixed them up. Then I went on to my mound and I used my auger, my 3-inch auger, and drilled 3-inch holes everywhere. everywhere. And then I went around and I threw 2 to 3 bulbs in every hole. I just grabbed randomly out of the bucket. I didn't pay attention to the depth too much. I just kind of averaged the holes at about probably 3 inches because that was kind of the average of where these bulbs might want to be. And I certainly didn't pay any attention to which way those bulbs were facing. I never even put my hand in the holes after I put those bulbs in there. Chucked them in the holes, covered them up with soil. So we put down a little bit of compost, followed up with a bit of grass seed and watered it in really well. And then the only other thing I did was I was very, very fastidious about keeping up on an animal repellent. So I'll link what I used below, but this was something to protect against deer and squirrels and chipmunks and raccoons and probably a groundhog and who knows what else might be lurking around trying to grab my bulbs or eat them after they came up. And I think we were really successful. I actually didn't see any signs of browsing on the mound at all. So what's next for this bulb mound? Well, it's going to get bigger. There's no way I'm not expanding this fall because this is such a successful, amazing project. I'm very happy with the varieties I chose, so I think I'll just replicate that, which I think will create a cohesive look anyway. I wouldn't want one side of the mound to look different from the other. But part of the reason that I think those varieties have been so successful is because they were a little smaller, they don't have really big foliage. So as that foliage sits there, you don't notice it so much. If you were looking at like a really big daffodil foliage in there, I think that would get perhaps a little bit harder to look at. So this actually looks not bad, even as it's fading and is going to sit here for a while as it dies back, fills up those bulbs with energy for next year, and gets ready to grow. The other thing I'm doing with this bulb mound right now is nothing. I'm just letting all of these plants be because I want them to spill their seed and spread that seed around so that these can naturalize. So chalk that up to a giant garden success. Stay tuned for part 2 come fall because there is definitely going to be a part 2. Have a great day in your garden. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Thank you to Flowerbulb.eu for partnering with me on this video. Flowerbulb.eu doesn't try to sell you anything. They are just a great source of information and inspiration on all things bulbs.